Hey guys, so today I'm talking about how to make instant compost. Now this composter right here, I've got 4 or 5 of them around the garden. I can slowly make compost over the winter, the spring, the summer months. But if you don't want to go to all the trouble of doing this, and it is a labor-intensive process, I'm going to show you how to make instant compost very simply. It'll be in a liquid form and it's very powerful, just like this is. Of course, I have to add this all through that process and then add it to the garden and break down and things like that. But let's look at an instant compost that only needs 5 ingredients that you can make. If you're already into your gardening season, this is a perfect time to make it and add it to the plants. Now, almost forgot to mention this. If you do decide you want to make your own composter, I'll put a link to that video right here that I made either last year or the year before. You can take a look at it. But again, we're doing instant compost today. Now let's go over the 5 ingredients first, and then I'll talk about how to assemble it. So one of the first things you're going to need is a 5-gallon bucket. And you can go with a smaller bucket, but this just makes it a lot easier if your garden is a little bit larger like mine, where I can cover a lot of different plants. There is a dilution rate I'm going to talk about. You're not going to put this on to your plants or soil drench or even a foliar feeding. You're going to even dilute it even more. I'll talk about that in just a second. So first thing you're going to need is a 5-gallon bucket, preferably one that has a lid that you can lightly put a lid on it and it can keep animals from getting into it. But again, you don't want to seal the lid completely. You want to have a little bit of flow there of air to allow any gases to escape. Now at my local hardware store, I'm always buying bags of black cow. I think it's one of the most productive things you can add to your vegetable garden, ornamentals, any type of potted plants is black cow. I think it's extremely important. This bag is quite heavy, and so if you want to order a smaller size bag, I did find out last night that Amazon sells smaller bags around $15 or $16. This is really cost prohibitive to ship. You'd be a lot better just going to your local hardware store, unless you just want to make a small batch, and I'll put a link in the description to the smaller bag of black cow. But this aged manure will not burn your plants. You have to make sure that you're using aged manure, not fresh manure, because you don't want to damage the root system of your plants by overpowering it with nitrogen. Now let me give you a rundown of all the ingredients or the important things that the black cow contains, or any type of aged animal manure. The first thing we're going to talk about is that it supplies nitrogen to your plant, and that's going to provide a lot of leafy growth. Now we don't want too much nitrogen, and a lot of people will make the mistake of putting a lot of nitrogen into their soil, and their plants will explode with growth. They'll get very large, but there's not enough of another ingredient that helps with flowering. So just remember, this particular brand, I really like it because it's not extremely high in nitrogen. You can always do more nitrogen if you want larger and faster plant growth, but we want, in my vegetable garden, we want flowering and fruiting and going through those stages and increasing fruit size. So nitrogen, you have to ease off a little bit and add the P and the K in NPK, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. Did I get that right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I may have reversed that there. Now it also contains phosphorus, which is what is going to help with root production and support the flowering phase. So nitrogen more for leafy growth, and phosphorus is going to help the roots and ultimately the fruit production. Now the potassium is going to help during stressful times, if you have a dry spell, if you're in an extreme heat situation. So that particular ingredient in our NPK is going to help when situations are really tough on the plant. Let's say you forget to water for a few days, the plant goes through a little bit of stress. So the NP and K is 3 things that you have to have in fertilizers, and in differing amounts depending on what your goal is. So in this instant compost tea we're making, it's going to do the same thing as long-term compost does, but it's going to do it a lot faster, and that's why the dilution rate is quite a bit. Now our second ingredient is unsulfured molasses, and this is going to be about 1 tablespoon. In case I didn't recommend it before, on the aged animal manure we're going to do 2 to 3 cups, but on the unsulfured molasses only 1 tablespoon. This is going to feed beneficial bacteria and fungi during the fermentation process. It contains small amounts of iron, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. So this is going to help microorganisms multiply, which improves the nutrient availability in the tea. So overall, this is going to help encourage the microbial activity that's going to convert our manure's nutrients into plant available form. So this is one of my favorite things to order. I'll put a link in the description if you don't have any at your local grocer. It's not used like it once was, but it is still being sold online. So I always have a bottle of this in the greenhouse. Now the next thing I want to talk about is an ingredient that I use quite a bit in the garden, but I don't saturate each plant with this. I do it very lightly. This is wood ash. It's from my fire pit. It's from all hardwoods. I've used this screen right here many times to filter out any of the larger pieces of charcoal. If you don't have a fire pit, I always recommend ordering this particular brand of wood ash online. It's made from hardwood as well, and it will add some really nice things to your mix here. It's going to add potassium and trace minerals such as calcium and magnesium. So it's going to slightly raise the pH. A lot of people send out warning messages, never use wood ash in there, but actually that's not true. It's going to slightly raise it because we're only using a very, very small amount. So this will also help neutralize acidic soils. If you've got too much acidic type soil, this will definitely help with that. It'll also, the potassium in here is going to help with flowering, fruiting, and disease resistance. So just remember that we're not using a large amount of this. Also, this is going to help balance the manure tea that may otherwise be too nitrogen heavy. So this kind of is a balancing agent that helps even things out quite a bit if there's a little bit too much nitrogen. Now the next thing we're adding is Epsom salt, and it's a very specific type of Epsom salt. We don't want it to have any fragrances, any additives to it. We want it to be non-fragrance, and we just want it to be pure Epsom salt. Even though we're calling it Epsom salt, actually it's magnesium. I'm going to give you a close-up of the bag to show you what the actual ingredient here. So a lot of people will say adding Epsom salt will kill your plant instantly. Well, it's not actually salt. It's really magnesium sulfate, and I'll give you a close-up to prove that. But I'm going to tell you exactly what this can do for you as well in our tea here, the instant tea we're making. I'm going to give you a close-up right here of our ingredients is magnesium sulfate. So don't let anybody tell you that Epsom salt is salt and it's going to kill your plants. It's just magnesium. Now you can use too much of it, but we want to make sure that you understand that this is a key component of chlorophyll, which is magnesium. It's going to supply sulfur, which is going to help the plants produce enzymes and proteins. Magnesium helps plants absorb phosphorus and improves photosynthesis efficiently, if I can say efficiency, if I can say that properly. But this is going to be really useful on your tomatoes, peppers, your cucumbers, your squash, and so a small amount is not going to hurt it. And I'm going to give you the entire recipe and how to put all this together to make sure you don't put too much of one or the other. Now you need something to keep your solids from getting into your liquid here, because I'm going to be using a sprayer, and so I don't want a lot of stuff floating around in there. But these brew bags are actually made for beer and for making beer, but it has a super fine mesh on it. Now you could use an old pillowcase, you could take part of a towel and fold it over to make sure, and maybe zip tie the top of it. But I like these brew bags. I'll put the link in the description. You can use them year after year. This has been used before. This brew bag I don't think has ever been used. So I would recommend that. Something if you're going to make this year after year is just to buy one of these. They're not expensive. Sometimes they come in a multi-pack, but these are kind of a nylon-based product. It's not going to disintegrate. They'll dry out nicely, and you can use them over and over. So that's the two things you're going to need. You're going to need some type of bucket, lid for it, and a brew bag so we can make our instant tea here that we're making. This is a thing that I've made so many times I've lost track. So this is one of the things that I start every year in the late springtime so I can really boost all plant growth. Once everything is out in the garden, it just does an amazing job of producing fruits, and it speeds up the production of everything in my garden. Now I want to talk just a second about the type of water we're using. I'm not using any type of chlorinated tap water. I've got a rain catch on the back of the greenhouse, and I always let that fill up. A little bit of algae grows in it. That's not going to hurt anything, but using chlorinated water, that chlorine can kill some of the microbes, and it can kill a lot of the microbes when you're trying to produce something like this type of fermented juice that's going to do so much good for the garden. So a lot of times you'll have a failure in this and you won't know what happened if you use chlorinated water, fluorinated, and whatever else other kind of chemicals they put in there. That could be the reason that it didn't do anything. You didn't see any results. So remember, you need to get you a rain catch. Just cut a gutter off and put a barrel right below it, and you can store all the water you need in there. Just make sure it's capped so the mosquitoes won't breed in it. But it will make a huge difference using non-chlorinated rainwater. If there's a stream or a creek near you that's not polluted, using that water would be even better because it's picked up some minerals along the way. So rainwater, stream water is the best thing to use. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your brew bag, and I like just to put it around the rim of the bucket, push it all the way to the base so I can put everything in there without having to worry about it falling inside of there. And the great thing is this has a drawstring on it, so you can seal up the top and nothing will come out even if it falls down in there. Another thing I was going to talk about is these small bags right here. These have a very fine mesh on them as well. I actually use these with my persimmon trees, my other fruit trees, and I'll just put it around the fruit, and it protects it from any type of insects that might damage, birds, anything like that. So I'll put a link in the description if they're still selling these. So if you want to make a much smaller batch, you don't want to make a 5-gallon bucket, you have a patio type garden, or you have a very small number of vegetable plants, you can make it in a much smaller bag, so you can reduce your overall cost and just make it in a lot smaller container. You wouldn't even need a 5-gallon bucket. It's something this size, maybe something just the size of 1 gallon would be enough. Any type of kitchen plasticware you could use. So again, you're not confined to just this size. You can downsize or upsize. You could make it even bigger. These bags are quite large, so you could go up to a 7-gallon bucket, or even some of the larger planters that don't have holes in them. You can make quite a bit of this if you have a really large garden. All right, I'm going to open up our bag of Black Cow, and then I'm going to take our measuring cup. This is about 1.5 cups, so I'll fill it full once, and I'm going to put it into our mesh bag. There's one, that's about 1.5, and then another one that's maybe a little bit halfway. It doesn't have to be perfectly measured, but you could do 2 cups, 2.5 cups, 3 cups, just depending on how strong you want your instant tea to be. And so there we go. We've got 2 in there. And let's move on to the next item. Now next we want to add our Epsom salt, and we want to kind of go easy on it because I said you can use too much of it. So this is our tablespoon measure, so I'm going to make it, I think it's 3 teaspoons to a tablespoon. So we're going to do 1 teaspoon of the Epsom salt, and then we'll move on to our next ingredient. I'm going to boost this a little bit. I'm going to make it 1 additional ingredient because I want to make sure that fermentation takes place over the next 2 to 3 days. So I'm just going to put in a little bit, and this would add an extra ingredient. You don't have to do this. You can still get fermentation to take place, but I'm going to put in 1 teaspoon of active dry yeast. I love this stuff because it makes such a huge difference, but you're not, it's not an absolute necessity, but I think it will absolutely help with the microbial activity. So again, this is an optional item, so it would bring the total to 6 items in our instant compost tea. Now our next 2 ingredients are our wood ash. You can use your homemade wood ash, or the type I just recommended you can buy if you don't have a fire pit or there's a burn ban in your neighborhood. But you're going to put 1 tablespoon, not a heaping tablespoon, but just 1 even tablespoon of wood ash. And then the last one, we're going to put in 1 tablespoon of the molasses. And the molasses is going to really help feed the microbes in the yeast. So we're going to put that in there last. And I guess I should say the last thing we're actually adding is our non-chlorinated water, but I just want to make sure that this is in there as much as possible. Molasses is kind of sticky, so you have to wait for it to drip off the spoon, and then we'll add in our most important ingredient, which is our water. Now let's add our non-chlorinated water here. Now I'm going to kind of swirl it around the outside to make sure I get everything mixed together quite well. I don't want any clumping. I want it to be well mixed. And I'm actually going to do a little bit of steeping once it's filled in there. And let's see, I'm going to pull our drawstring here, and I'm just going to allow that to steep. Now what this is going to look like is something like maybe a weak to medium strength coffee. And as I mentioned earlier, it's good to always have a lid with this to make sure it doesn't fall in there or some animal doesn't try to get to it. But you don't want it completely sealed because there are going to be certain pressures building up with our yeast and the reaction there with the microbes. But just do about 2 or 3 minutes of steeping to make sure that our water has as much of the ingredients mixed in there so we can get the proper reaction. So before I go on to dilution rates, I want to talk for a second about something I've created. Sorry, I had to grab it there. I created a 10-page PDF that I'm going to put in our Patreon, and this goes into a much deeper dive. It talks about other ingredients and other ways to make this. It talks about the basic one that I'm making today, but then it goes into a lot deeper dive, like I said. So take a look at that PDF. If you're a member already, you can get it no charge. It's just part of the benefits. I'm always trying to give as much information to my members who help support the channel so much. So again, the Patreon link is down below. Now you're going to let this ferment for anywhere from maybe a day if it's really hot weather up to 3 days, and that's going to really make a difference. You're going to stir it maybe once, twice a day to make sure there's some oxygen being added. And one thing I will tell you that's really beneficial is these little small aeration pumps. I'll put a link in the description. They're really inexpensive, mainly made for aquariums. You can just run a hose down into it. I'll show you this right here. And you run a hose in there and you just put it on the side, and you oxygenate our instant compost tea just 24 hours a day. It's not going to use a lot of electricity. These little pumps use very small amount of watts, maybe 10, 15, maybe 20 watts. And that's going to really activate this instant compost tea. Your microbes will be in the billions more than it would be if you're just doing a stirring, which is not a problem. You can do it that way if you don't want to use the pump. But if it's cold outside, or you're going to put this in a basement where it's cold, you need to bring it inside to allow the water not to get cold. The ideal temperature is anywhere from 70 to 80 degrees. So if it's already warm outside, just put it in the shade, not direct sunlight, where it can do that fermentation process over the next few days. Now I want to talk about dilution rates. If you're going to do the soil drench method where you're watering the roots directly, make sure you do it not after just a huge rain. You want to do it when the soil is just a little bit on the dry side, so the roots are really searching out some liquid there. But you're going to do this at a rate of 1 part of our tea to 5 parts water. Now if you want to do foliar spraying, you want to dilute it even more. You take the already diluted instant compost tea and dilute it another 1 part of that to 10 parts water. So it's actually a double dilution. So don't just do 1 to 10, do 1 to 5 here. And then you can, after you did your soil drenches, you can dilute your soil drench formula another 1 to 10. 1 part of that to 10 more parts of water. So it's a very weak formula spraying on your leaves. You don't want to take a chance of just putting too much on your leaves because it could have a negative or adverse reaction. So again, there's a double dilution on foliar feeding, and then again, just normal dilution rate at the base of the plant. Now, sorry, it's late afternoon and I'm trying to get a good angle here on the sunlight, but as you can see, it just looks like a regular cup of coffee, and that's pretty normal. Now when you go to finish out this, you want to pull this out of our solution and allow it to drip completely out into our bucket before we start doing the dilutions, and make sure we get as much of the mixture into the formula as possible. And so just let that sit there until it stops dripping, and then you're ready to do your dilution. So right here I'm going to just put up on the screen what you can expect. Pause the video and you can take a look at all those reactions you're going to see in your garden, and prove it to yourself. Try this on just a few plants, and then away in another area, don't do anything like this, and just compare the two results. And I think you'll be amazed at how good this instant compost tea works. So guys, I really appreciate you watching. If you have a question or a comment, I hope you'll become a public subscriber first. I tend to put those questions and comments first, and I can react to them faster. When you're getting anywhere from 1 to 2, 300 questions and comments a day, it's nearly impossible to read them all when you have the duties around a yard, you have ornamentals to take care of, you have a vegetable garden, and other responsibilities in life. So I try to give a priority to anybody who's become a subscriber. So guys, also if you really want to help the channel grow, I've got a Patreon link down below. That really encourages me to keep making videos. Sometimes it's kind of discouraging because you don't know if anybody's really listening out there. So guys, I really appreciate you watching. Have a great day.